As tens of millions of Americans live in poverty and wait in heartbreakingly long lines at food banks just to feed their families, lawmakers, particularly Republican lawmakers like Senator Marsha Blackburn, accuse them of supporting socialism for wanting some relief. Here's what she had to say in a recent interview.
We know that what the Democrats are trying to do with this is to put us on a pathway to a guaranteed minimum income, which is one of their socialist agenda items. We also know that President Trump is frustrated, as am I, by a lot of the wasteful spending that is in the budget that was passed, the omnibus spending bill.
No, you're not. You're not worried about wasteful spending at all, at all. She has voted in favor of all sorts of legislation that is incredibly wasteful. Of course, she voted in favor of the National Defense Authorization Act, which costs $741 billion. She voted in favor of the same legislation last year. Also, she's not in favor of pulling U.S. involvement out of Yemen, which I'm sure we're spending money on. No on the removal of armed forces, from hostilities against Iran. We're spending money on that. She's voted against a carbon tax, which could bring in some revenue. Doesn't care about that. Also voted for Trump's tax cuts for the rich. Seems like Marsha Blackburn does not care about government waste, does not care about balancing the budget, doesn't care about any of that, and has instead decided to use, scary sounding words for right-wing audiences by accusing people who need relief right now for advocating for socialism, which we have socialism in this country. It's just, socialism that helps corporations out. But, when it comes to people who are really suffering right now through no fault of their own, Marsha Blackburn just wants to give them the middle finger.
Yeah. And, a little bit earlier, I was watching, or I was reading the transcript of a Joe Manchin interview where he was talking about it, because I was wondering, I was trying to do the math on how many need to cross over from the Republican Party. And then the thing is, with the Democrats, you have to possibly account for some Democrats not going along. And he's against them too. And basically, the reason I'm bringing it up now is using almost exactly the same language. Like, he's talking about, instantly he pivots when asked about $2,000 because he supports something lower, 600 to 1,200, something like that. He starts instantly talking about the national debt rate rising too quickly under George W. Bush, and how he's like, and then he tries to make it like this sort of populist thing where he's saying, we've all been suffering and too much money's been given to the most wealthy, but we do have to get out of this together. But now you're turning against it. Like, you're turning in this like fiscal austerity sort of direction at the time where finally there is something that not only is generally designed to help out people who are struggling, but literally has limits baked into it that make sure that that's the only people who actually get it. And he's against it. So whether it's, Marsha Blackburn or him, like, this is the sort of language that we should get ready for, not just when it comes to aid during the pandemic, but a lot of the big, bold legislation that we want to see passed under Biden. Suddenly the deficits are going to matter and the national debt is going to matter. And the fact that they passed these massive military budgets literally just weeks ago, like, that's ancient history. We're not supposed to remember that.
Okay, so with that said, I actually do want to go to this video. It might be the same person you're talking about. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler goes on Fox News, and he claims he's very worried about the national debt. The same kind of argument that we're expecting to hear over and over again during the Biden administration, even though during the Trump administration, he did the opposite of balancing any budget. I mean, he cut revenue by cutting taxes for the rich and then increased spending. Didn't hear a peep from this guy. But now all of a sudden, when we're talking about relief checks, here's the argument that he makes.
We've got to remember that as we move forward, debt and deficit, we need to tackle these issues because by definition, an economic definition, debt and deficit are nothing more than taxation on future Americans. That's going to slow our economic growth and our recovery. Yeah. Additionally, I still stand by the point that the strongest stimulus that we can give the American economy is to end the draconian lockdowns. Americans just want to get back to work. End these shutdowns, allow the economy to move forward. We can open our businesses while still taking precautions with this virus. Just let the American people get back to work. That will do more than anything to get stimulus to the American people.
So I actually want to read one of our comments from our members who are writing in live as we do the show. Thank you to our members. You can become one by going to tyt.com/join. Rob writes in and says, national debt increased by a third in Trump's 4 years, $19.9 trillion to $28 trillion. No, Republicans don't care about the budget, but they can't get beyond socialism bad bumper sticker logic. I could not agree with you more. And again, they will shamelessly make this argument over and over and over again during the Biden administration, during any moment where Americans might actually get some relief, especially during this pandemic.
Yeah. Like we're saying, it's a taste of things to come. It's incredibly frustrating, especially, considering the scale of the problems that we face, and the fear that, these sorts of like predilections, not just on the Republican side when it's a Democratic president, but among enough Democrats, a sort of critical mass. If you had a particularly strong president, maybe you could push against that. But I don't see, the current leader of the Democratic Party as the person who's going to do that.
Joe Biden has promised that he will never embarrass the Republicans. Okay. Story we covered earlier this week.
He's already embarrassing us.
100%, but he doesn't care about that. That's
what if
the
I
problem.
became a Republican?
He doesn't care about that. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe that's what we need to do.